St. Edward State Park is a 326-acre nature reserve park situated on the shores of Lake Washington. The park is home to numerous wildlife and plants, with trails running through the park for everyone to enjoy. Within the park sits St. Edward Seminary, which was constructed in 1931, operating as a seminary for many years. Since the seminary closed its doors in 1977, the state of Washington purchased the property, and it has been open for public enjoyment ever since. In recent years, however, the natural sanctuary of St. Edward State Park has come under threat. The Washington State Parks Commission has selected Daniels Real Estate to restore the abandoned St. Edward Seminary into a park lodge and conference center. This will not only interfere with the park visitors' experience, it will be severely detrimental to the nature and wildlife that calls this park home.
Hello, I am State Senator Marilyn Chase. I represent the 32nd Legislative District, and I used to represent this park. We've been working on this park for probably 15 years to save it. It's the last undeveloped piece of property on the shores of Lake Washington. And we think it is so special because our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, will never have an idea of what this area was like if we lose this part of the park. It is the home of a seminary building, and we're trying to figure out what's the best use for it for the community. The Archbishop sold the state the property so the people could enjoy a passive outdoor experience, which means there would not be development here. But now we have a proposal to turn this beautiful park and this beautiful building into a high-end destination place for conventions. It essentially, I believe, is being converted to a purpose that it was not intended to be used for.
My family lives in Kenmore. We have for many years, and we were very interested in what this building could become. And we were hopeful that this building would be saved. It's a lovely building, and not only saved, but treated with respect. A group of us worked on the nomination to put the whole park on the National Register of Historic Places. However, we didn't understand that when a developer restores a historic building, and all the buildings except the pool here are historic, that he gets a 20% tax cut on his personal income. This nomination has made the building very interesting to developers who have large incomes. So we have a problem now that the National Register promotes this monetary incentive to renovate a building. Daniels presented to the public one narrative for a rustic hotel that would serve the park visitors. Then in the beginning of this May, he changed his narrative and said, this will be a convention center with a minimum of 70,000 convention goers a year.
My main concerns about park development are that this park actually belongs to the people of Washington State, and what's happened is some less valuable space down by the waterfront, which is not buildable and barely hikeable, has been transferred. Basically, they took that land and gave this land up to a developer.
And this whole convention center project is going to excise or cut out the heart of the park. It's a pity that that might happen, because our state parks department candidly panicked off of bad information and thought they had no choice but to give this park away.
We were told that it would cost $40 million to do earthquake retrofit. In fact, the developer now tells us, no, it's only about $1 million. The building is very, very sound. We were also told it would be millions and millions of dollars to stop the water intrusion. He now has said that the repairs that we did in 2007 have stopped the water intrusion, so there's no problem with water getting into the building. It is now within the financial reach of community organizations.
I've tried to contact him. I've asked him to work with our nonprofits, and he never calls back. This is not a place for private enterprise to take over a public park.
This is a special park. It was purchased with money that came from the federal government, Land Water Conservation Fund money, which essentially requires a passive use of the property.
When news first came out about the park becoming a hotel and convention center, I started to do a little research into the Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the whole of St. Edward Park is considered part of our biodiversity corridor. There are many protected species here.
The scope of the convention center is too big for the size of this nature park, and the Land and Water Conservation Act that paid for this park is supposed to be for passive outdoor recreation for the public.
I find the passive part of the deeding that created this space in the first place to be in jeopardy. We're going against the grain of what people originally intended, and they had some wisdom to what they tried to set up in the first place. And I'd like to think that that structure grants us the right to keep it that way.
This conversion process will require that the value of the building and the property be traded for other park properties. This is going to be a very great expense, and our state will probably be the party on the hook because they have leased the property to Daniels, a very capable developer who's not going to be responsible most likely for the conversion costs.
To me, what's happening in this park is a crime. I can see it's going to be the start of this happening in many parks, and people throughout the state of Washington don't know. It's not like someone puts it on the front of a newspaper that a little park in Kenmore is going to disappear, but it's one of the last green spaces like this anywhere within 20 miles. We've fought a long, hard battle to change it. We've been told many different stories, the first being to the majority of the citizens of Kenmore. And we were told that this was going to be just a hotel, restaurant, and it has since morphed into a 70,000 person per year convention center.
The Land and Water Conservation Act is a federal program designed to provide funding for outdoor recreation. And in fact, the grant that was used to buy this park was the largest single grant ever in the history of the state of Washington. The program is just for outdoor recreation. And if this convention center happens, the only outdoor recreation that's going to be happening is going to be convention goers walking from their car into the bar.
The state is turning this park over to the developer for $1.5 million. That doesn't even come close to the value. There are political issues at stake here. We would like to find a use for the building. We think the building is an iconic building. It was designed by the architectural firm of Graham, but it will be not for the use of the people who live here if it becomes a high-end convention center.
And we, as the grown-ups, are trying our best to work with Mr. Daniels, state parks, our senators, our House of Representatives to preserve the intent of what purchased this park, which was the Land and Water Conservation Fund.
And we are wanting to stop all potential developers in this park.
My take on this is that the state park commissioners and the legislature and the city of Kenmore and the real estate developer doing the project have all gotten in together and said, let's save the building at any cost, and have not been paying attention to the true value of the park.
My first visit was 60 years ago. At that time, it was a seminary building. And as a child, I was 12 years old, and I was very taken by the way this park made me feel even then. It was beautiful, it was quiet, and I've been coming ever since with my family and my children and my grandchildren.
I've been coming to this park for as long as I can remember, and it's just been a really big part of like my whole life basically.
And we use this park to get away from the city. We use this park to feel safe from cars in an urban area. It's a special, tiny, wooded park where we're able to bring our family. I learned how to ride my bike here. My son rides his bike here. We were part of building the playground.
Some of the things I like to do here is running around with my brother, and biking with my brother on the sweet grass, sitting here with my wonderful family.
We utilize the wetlands buffer ball fields for Wilderness Awareness Camp every summer, and if you take away the ball fields from our campers, and that's all the campers, then it would displace 1,000 campers at least a summer. So I take my 18 to 21 students with special needs here and we just run across that field. We're lucky we don't have to park here, but I can't imagine trying to find a parking spot when you're competing with however many hundreds of conference people visiting the park.
My grandson grew up in this park. He used to roll around going down the gentle little slopes of the hills here. It has an amazing value.
I just hiked in my favorite park. I've been coming here for 20 years and I have hiked here over 2,000 times, I would say. I'm really here for the wonderful wildlife that calls this place home. In this area, our population is increasing so much that we're really going to need this natural space to walk in and have quiet and be with the animals. And I think we owe it to the animals in this urban environment to protect this place.
People may not realize it, but this park is the only wilderness waterfront on all of Lake Washington. Lake Washington is a very urban lake. This is the only place left where it's been left in its natural state. And to focus so much on the building and develop the building and turn it into a conference resort hotel is just a terrible thing to do in the middle of this truly valuable thing.
I've been coming here since I was a kid, and I find that this park, if we end up with 70,000 conference goers, is going to be a very different place. What will that do with parking? What will that do for the tender and sensitive ecosystems in this space? It is a small park surrounded by an urban area, and it's already getting fairly squeezed. The amount of people that will have an impact on the environment, on the parking, on the infrastructure of just the outside road is going to be detrimental to the experience of this place.
You need to be using this area as an educational laboratory where children come and learn what makes nature thrive.
We think it would be great use for, say, an environmental education center, perhaps a youth hostel. There are many things that we could use this building for.
It is much more difficult to put an economic value on a park. One is replaceable. A park is not replaceable. You cannot put a 100-year-old park anywhere. Daniels has not assessed the damage to the park. He's denying access by building a hotel and convention center.
I'd ask that we pause and consider how rare what we have is now before we change it irrecoverably. Once we change it this way, we'll never get it back.
And if we protect it now and act as the best stewards of this park, then we'll have it forever.
So that's why we're really hoping that even though it's late in the game, we can find a way to stop this process.
Thank you, and please join us and let's turn this around so that we can protect the park and its ecology for our grandchildren and their grandchildren.